And then with the beauty salons, there is some health department codes, and I'll talk to the health department also, because we don't want to say they can do one thing and then they get kicked out when they get to the health department. So. Sure. Anything else? All right, thank you all.
Thanks, Gary.
Continue. Commissioner Waller?
The only other two things on my list, one is a poultry ordinance. We reviewed Lexington's. And the other is discussion of some kind of incentives to restore abandoned historical properties, but we can pick that up at a later work session, because that might go deeper than a simple ordinance change. But regarding poultry, I'd really be in favor of us adopting something similar to Lexington's ordinance. Most urban areas are headed in this direction, essentially allowing a few non-crowing chickens on private property. I realize it has the potential to be, some folks may have objections to this. I know that some folks are really in support of it. Some folks got a hold of me a couple of weeks ago, completely oblivious to the fact that we've actually already discussed this a little bit, or already broached the subject, asking what they needed to do to petition the city to allow this, or to amend our ordinance. I advised them that we had actually already just started to discuss it, and encouraged them to contact us and let us know. I gave them a slate of meetings, so we'll probably hear from folks at some point. As far as I'm concerned, the ability to produce, as long as you're not hurting anybody, as long as you're not hurting your neighbors, I think the ability to produce your own food in your own space should really just be a basic human right. For me, it's really that cut and dried. I've dealt with poultry before, and I can tell you that the Lexington ordinance basically says you can have I think up to 6 non-crowing chickens on your own property, as long as they are fenced in and can't escape into the public or into your neighbor's property, which is essentially, that's not really any different than our rules regarding dogs, except I don't think we have a limit on the amount of dogs you can have. But I can tell you that chickens, a few non-crowing chickens produce less noise and less waste than the average single dog does. I think outlawing them strikes me as kind of arbitrary. It doesn't strike me as any more sensical than outlawing dogs or cats or vegetable gardens.
Mr. Mueller, you want to respond?
If I may, about 3 years ago, there was a famous goat, Soki the goat, I believe her name was, and they had a duck also, but I don't know the name of the duck. The commission then asked me to reconfirm or amend the definition of livestock. And there's 2 rules. One's a code of ordinance rule, and one is in the city's zoning rules. We do allow livestock, farm animals in the city limits. You have to be agriculturally zoned, and you have to have 5 acres, which kicks out the majority of all residential properties in our town. So we sent it to the Planning Commission. They spent a long time deliberating it. They amended the regulations. They included even some exotic animals in some of the definitions, but they were specifically adamant at that time that 5 acres agriculture is the right place for farm animals, including chickens. We went to the City Commission. They adopted that ordinance and changed the code of ordinances to match that of the zoning regulations. So we changed both of them. Just wanted to bring that up. Happy to do as your pleasure to send it back to the planning, but we would need to change both the zoning regulations as well as the code of ordinances if we make any amendments to either decrease the acreage or to change the definition of livestock or stockyard or that process. As far as dogs, canines, we limit 5 adult canines.
Okay.
If you have, I think it's 5 or more, then it's considered a kennel. You need a kennel license. You have to be commercially zoned like a vet. But you can have as many 6 months or younger, I think is the rule. The police enforce that section until there's more than 5, and then I get involved. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
And to be clear, I think it makes sense, to outlaw stockyards within the city limits. I mean, you look at something like pigs or cows or horses, and you're talking about a lot of waste. You're talking about water quality problems. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, I think, to keep that out of the city limits, or at least, keep that out of a site that's less than 5 acres. But again, if we allow 5 dogs, I mean, a chicken makes less noise, less waste, less smell, less bother for the neighbors than even a small dog. So I really would be in favor of limiting that. But I mean, either there's support to do it or there isn't.
Comments?
Does this mean that we should just not continue to discuss it, or can we move on to getting recommendations from staff?
My thoughts on it are that if you were to allow poultry, I would still want some mechanism for, for neighbors to be able to say, wait a second here, this guy's got 5 chickens, they're all over my yard,
Sure.
blah, blah, blah. And in trying to devise some way in my mind to be able to keep those protections in place, I just see a bureaucratic nightmare getting out of control. I mean, and I'm not saying that there's going to be a rash of people who are going to raise a lot of chickens that are going to raise a lot of turmoil throughout the city, but I can just see us going back to that tit for tat type mindset and having to not only amend the zoning codes, amend the code of ordinances, and then also keep our inspection staff who are going to have to respond to those complaints if they exist. And I mean, it just, I just see it snowballing into an issue. I do agree with you on the premise, though, that you should have the ability to grow your own food if you want, and that's a desirable thing. But I don't know, I think that this could be a major shock to the system in terms of, that would be very difficult for us to anticipate what would happen down the road, with not only with here at City Hall in terms of bureaucracy, but relationships in neighborhoods and things like that spill over here in terms of code enforcement meetings and all of that. So I'm a bit hesitant to move forward on it.
I guess I would submit that all those dynamics also apply to
pretty much anything that you
to cats, to dogs, to other animals that we do keep in place. I mean,
but we're not creating and we're not making it now legal to have cats. I mean, that's something that's you already are
right. But I'm saying that framework in terms of, I mean, your dog isn't allowed to go onto your neighbor's property. If it does, there's provisions in place. We have an animal control officer that takes care of that sort of thing, et cetera. I can tell you that I mean, obviously properly kept chickens are it's harder for them to escape than it is for dogs to escape from fenced yards. But I mean, I don't think there would be a need to establish any new framework. We already have a framework in place. We just would say, okay, fine, you're allowed to have cats, you're allowed to have dogs, you're allowed to have chickens, and the same rules apply across the board.
I guess the framework and what I'm seeing is that if my neighbor was going to have 5 chickens, I'd want to make sure that those chickens weren't coming into my yard. So how do we ensure that there's a proper fencing? And then does it become the city's job to come out and say, okay, this is proper fence or not? Do you see what I'm saying on that?
Well, how do we do that with dogs? I mean, that's my point.
Yeah.
The city doesn't regulate the fencing that's appropriate for a dog. If your dog's getting into your neighbor's property, then you got a problem. Then that's the problem. If your fence is 2 feet tall and has big holes in it, and your dog isn't going onto your neighbor's property, then it's not a problem. I mean, you know, it's the result that matters, right?
I'm having some difficulty moving forward on that.
I don't support it.
Well, we can set that one aside then. Unless the mayor and,
I would not, I'm not.
well, that's the end of that one.
I will say I did ask for, I reached out to, looked at other communities and the poultry ordinances. Our email back and forth with Ms. Coward with our extension office. And I haven't gotten any definitive results back from her yet. I need to talk with her. I plan to talk to her about it, but if there's not enough support to it, it's fine. But I do understand. At first, I had more misgivings about it until I saw the number of communities in Kentucky that do have the poultry ordinances. And I still would like to know just from my own benefit, so I do plan to talk with her as well.
Too, I'll call Ms. Coward.
But I'm not saying I'm for, I mean, against it or for it. I just was saying I was going to, at first I thought too that there's no way that this would be something that I would support the city. And I still have reservations about it. But I was surprised to see how many larger cities do have those ordinances. I was really surprised because I didn't think there were that many.
My understanding is, I mean, that is the trend in metros or in urban areas, is towards, you know, towards allowing this sort of thing. But that's. Well then I guess the only other thing I wanted to bring up today, and this we don't even have to get into an in-depth discussion of this, but there's been, I would like to keep alive talk of developing some kind of incentives for restoring abandoned historical properties, or for, you know,
For what?
restoring some kind of incentives for restoring abandoned historical properties. I mean, or just dilapidated properties.
Yeah.
It's actually been such a while since we've heard back on that. I'm not even entirely clear on where we're standing right now.
I think where we had left it was that Rob was going to provide us with a written report on what other communities are doing as incentive programs
Right.
for that, but we have not yet received that back from him. Is there a way that we can ensure that we get that, you know, in a week or so, or something like that? So, firm deadline here, we've got to have it. You know, we just want.
What kind of deadline would you like to put on it?
Well, this has been open for a while, so you know, if he could get something.
By a work session next month?
Yeah, a work session next month.
By the second Monday?
Yeah, the second Monday of next month.
Okay.
That's all I've got. Thanks, guys.
Commissioner May?
So do we need to go ahead and move forward on the list? I was looking, I think there was agreement for everyone on I think everyone agreed on the fireworks ordinance.
Yeah.
And I started thinking in my head, since this is February, in order to get that ordinance going, we're going to
Need it on the March
need it
agenda.
ASAP. Because I think that was one where everyone agreed. That, I mean, that one does have a little bit of a time
Sure.
factor in it.
Are we talking about just locally adopting the old state
It said,
standards?
we talked about reimposing the ban outright and increase license fees for the vendors that were going to sell various fireworks. I don't remember what that exactly means when it says increase the license fees, but
I think those were different options, because obviously if we're banning it outright, then we're not granting any license fees.
Okay, and didn't Commissioner Turner, you said you had a couple?
I have we've already covered mine too.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Head?
If, may I ask
Yes,
a
sir.
question? Commissioner, then are you suggesting that we go back and adopt the existing state prohibition?
I was just saying, I think we all, whatever the majority, I think all five of us agreed that we didn't need to have the
the ones that go in
ones
the
that
air.
are going in there and exploding.
Right.
And that, I mean, whatever we all agreed to is what I would support.
I'm just trying to fix the model that we need to look at.
I think the fire chief had.
Fire chief.
Chief, here comes the chief.
Did have something.
I'm in the process of gathering some of the other localities' ordinances, even some that were adopted as recently as back in December, particularly in Jefferson County. So I'm gathering all that information, and there are a number of ways we can approach that. We can go back to the old state law and limit it to those types of fireworks. Some localities have done that, in addition to adding increased vendor fees. So there are any number of options or parameters that we can put our restrictions, apply our restrictions with. Anyway, my plan was to have something ready to present to the commission as soon as the budget process is done and this Chapter 40 thing is finished. Hopefully in May to have something in your hands to start reviewing so that we can get it adopted before the July 4th season.
When do we traditionally start granting licenses?
That's the problem.
June.
We're doing licensing.
Are we already
We're
licensing?
doing year, we license folks year round.
I mean, practically speaking, when do the fireworks licenses start hitting?
Actually, the city doesn't have anything to do with those licenses. Those are stately issued licenses by the State Fire Marshal's Office. And for seasonal sales, they're only good for 30 days. So typically, the vendors get them mid-June in that area.
Okay, so we don't require a business license.
I'm not sure about that.
I assume.
I think we don't, I'm sorry if I made it, we don't we have to get an itinerant
Yes.
license?
The temporary tent sales do have to get an itinerant merchant license, and they have to get a permit through my office.
Right.
We get calls early April, usually,
That's what I was thinking.
figuring out where they can go for the new ones, the ones that have been here and have come back, like the Walmart. And it's the same vendor so far, so he knows when to come and talk to us. But we've had a lot more this past July. We had a lot more vendors, a lot more trailers versus just tents, because it opened up the box.
We all did agree that we need to address this. I don't believe we actually agreed on the solution, but to my recollection, I think we did agree that anything we do would have to be done in coordination with the county to have any effect at all. Because if we push folks to the city limits, that doesn't actually change. In terms of what can be sold, that doesn't really change anything in the city. I mean, because the enforcement's very difficult when it comes to actually setting off the illegal fireworks.
Right.
In fact, that's almost impossible to enforce.
Yes.
So it seems that the only thing we can really do is to address the availability.
Exactly.
And if we don't address the availability countywide, then we're not going to be doing much of anything. And it seems like May is a little late to address this in that context. Maybe we could approach the county about the possibility of just jointly, locally reestablishing the state policy, the state regulations that were in effect a year ago, or 2 years ago. Because that seems like the simplest, timeliest solution, at least.
You're probably right, Commissioner. And I can move that up to trying to get something done in the month of March. But as you said, I had planned on gathering all this information. I've only got a couple more to get. And then having a meeting with county judge, sheriff, county fire chief, city police chief, and all of us make sure we get on the same page and then bring out something. Okay, so I'll shoot for March to try to have something drafted.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We see with this topic now. We're ready to go on to the next one. All right. Mr. Woods?
Next thing on our agenda was a discussion of the sustainability coordinator position. And the Green Vision, of course, has been instrumental in promoting this and promoting a strategy to address these issues. And Green Vision had a meeting last week, and they've been sort of dormant in Franklin County. They've been doing a lot of other things, and Mr. Rumpke had been very busy on some fundraising and things. So I met with them last week, and one thing that the commission, this commission, had asked me to do was another check with two other parties that we thought were going to partner with us on this, and they are both not inclined to party with us on this position. So I'm reporting that back, and it looks as though, of course, all three parties are in the same budget cycle. So it looks as though those two parties would not be in a position to even consider it at all until maybe in the next budget cycle. However, prior to this, I had convened a group of very knowledgeable people in the field and had written a job description, a proposed or a draft job description, which had been shared with the other two parties, hoping they'd partner with it. But since they have not, it kind of puts us in a position of redesigning what we might want from that person. And I've talked briefly with Randy about it, and I've talked as far as the human resources aspect of it, and briefly with Mr. Hackbart about the logistical part of it, because the person, would be under Mr. Hackbart's department and physically housed there. And he does have a space that would be appropriate for a person if he cleared out, some other of his things that are in that room. Now, Mr. Rumpke said that he was going to, of course, he's trying to revitalize the Green Vision here in Franklin County, because only the city and the county passed the resolution, and they did not pass it specifically as drafted and proposed. So it does need some tweaking, and then he is going to personally meet with the plant board and discuss it with them. And I see, as I told him, there is a commission formed, the Green Vision Commission. And because the other two partners have not gone forward with it, if we hire a sustainability coordinator as the resolution is written, it would give the city of Frankfort 2 members on the commission, which kind of give us a disproportionate power, if you will. So that's my report, and that's where we are right now.
Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Fred. I really appreciate that update on where we're at. It is unfortunate that two partners that we were working with backed out and didn't want to do this with us any longer. And the problem, just for public awareness, that you have when you do that is when you're in your budgeting process, we budgeted for roughly 1/3 of the salary for that position. So I think if we hired somebody full-time, roughly now, we would still be able to keep that salary within the budget, but then when you go into the next year or the year after, then you're going to have to bump up that salary to cover that position. Now, first, granted, a sustainability coordinator, the primary purpose of it is to organize the city employees and find cost-saving measures. I think that's something that's done in any community that they're a part of. I know firsthand experience from City of Louisville and the project for the Green City, that has been a major accomplishment there. An idea to toss out, I am concerned about the expense, the initial expense of it. My question, I guess, maybe to the board or to Fred would be, is there a precedent, or do other communities do this, and is it something feasible for us? Since we would have only been getting roughly a third of the sustainability coordinator's time and we'd be paying a third of the salary, is it possible to get someone on a contract basis so that your initial upfront cost isn't as high, and then as the city financial situation improves, and it's morning in Frankfurt again here, that we would be able to bring that person on full-time and actually be able to afford to incur it all in the city. Because right now it might be difficult for us to do that. If we did it on a contract basis, you know, it might be a little more palatable for the budget.
I can actually answer that question. Because if you remember when we just started discussing this a year ago, it was within the context of whether or not it's more economically feasible to hire somebody in-house or to contract it out. There are a number of contracts available for that sort of thing, but there's a catch with those contracts, which is that anybody we contract with is going to, by necessity, be looking to profit from the energy savings. And so the way the contracts work is that it's low cost or it's no risk for the city, as in, you know, we spend X dollars on efficiency improvements, then we are guaranteed that we'll at least get that much money back. They guarantee that, but the catch is that further savings beyond that actually go to the company.
Right, and I'm familiar with those type. I'm talking about maybe, you know, you have. I'm just trying to figure out a way, because I just don't see how it would be very difficult for us to incur it, not in particularly this year's, because I think we could, but next year's budget. And if you did like contracted a consultant or something to serve in that position, because really a lot of what it is organizing people, you know, changing sort of your modus operandi throughout the day. I know a big push at the University of Louisville that got a big pullback was those little personal heaters you have in your office. And sometimes it gets so cold you got to turn them on. The University of Louisville banned those. You're no longer allowed to have those in your office, and part of that was as a result of sustainability coordinators. So if you had a consultant that could at least provide us some sort of stopgap measure until our budget improves, that's really kind of, you know, where I think we're at right now. Because I think the intention, and ideally you bring one of these positions in to share it with your other community partners. That's what Louisville has done. I mean, they share a sustainability coordinator with the city, the university, and the school districts, which are three much larger public entities than us. So I don't know. I feel like that since we're only would be using them, you know, we planned on using them a third of the time, that as a temporary stopgap measure until we can get the budget back on place, we create the position, but we fill it with a contract until we can bring it on full house. I know that it is more cost effective in the long run to bring someone in, you know, in-house, but right now I'm nervous about the amount of upfront money that we would have to put in the budget next fiscal year.
I guess I disagree that it's it is cost effective in the long run.
Oh, no doubt, it's cost effective in the long run.
Sure. I think everything we've seen is that it's cost effective in the short run too, and the fact that we already have money budgeted and that we could get a few months of work in for them to start building up a return before the next budget cycle kicks in, because we're still spending. I mean, staff have made some improvements on their own, but we're still spending about $1.5 million a year on energy, and if we can get a 5% reduction on that within the first year, that's a pretty weak showing by a sustainability coordinator, and that's still more than enough to pay for the position. That's that's $75,000 right there, and that I don't think it would be unreasonable to expect a 5%, you know, at least a 5% showing. So I think the point is that the paybacks